Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
This the monster from the swamps, Regis Rougarou Program.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Cordina, former IBF world champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 462 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host Joey Coastman. I'm joined as ever by former heavyweight world title challenger, the main man himself, Mr. Fast Eddie Chambers. Eddie, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great, my man. How about you?
Always good when speaking with you, Eddie. We're going to waste no time here. We're going to dive straight into the review part of the show. This podcast has ended up going out on a Friday instead of a Thursday. We were struggling with getting a guest on, and I didn't want to put a podcast out with no guest on, so we did end up getting a guest in the end, of course, and it took an extra day, basically. So because of that, the podcast has gone out a day late on the Friday. Hopefully you get a chance to listen to it in time for any fights coming up this weekend, though there aren't too many to mention. So like I say, don't want to waste any more time. I'm going to dive straight into the review part of the show. We're going to start here in Canada at the Centre Videotron in Quebec City, Quebec. This one was live on ESPN. It was live on Sky Sports. Couple fights on the undercard to mention. Abdullah Mason with another win. He's now 15-0. A TKO for him in the second against Mike Ohan Jr., now 19-2. Really good performance from Abdullah Mason. You know, I felt that his shot placement and his timing was just exceptional, and it was just another tick, you know, another box ticked, and he just looks like a future star. I really think that he is, you know, he's going to be something special down the line. Also on the card, Jahi Tucker with a win, now 12-1 with a draw, a unanimous decision over 8 against Santiago Fernandez, now 8-2 with a draw. And also maybe one to watch, a guy called Osleys Iglesias, now 12-0, I think with about 11 of them by KO, a TKO here in the second against Sena Egbeko, now 28-4. Iglesias is a guy that, you know, a lot of people are talking about right now. I think I'm probably late to jump on the bandwagon, but I hadn't seen too much of him prior to the other night, but he looked really good. So maybe one to watch. Also on the card, Arslanbek Makhmudov, now 19-2. He was TKO'd in the 8th round by Guido Vianello, now 13-2 with a draw. Mad old fight. I was really happy for Vianello, you know. It was a great comeback win for him after obviously losing last time out to Efia Jagber in what was an arguable loss. It was a close fight. It was a narrow points loss for him. But yeah, he came back as the underdog here against Makhmudov, and he managed to pull off the upset. It was obviously a TKO just simply down to Makhmudov's eye. It was swollen up like a golf ball, and after the doctor checked the eye, I think it was 3 times in the end, he finally stopped the fight. But yeah, the eye was completely shut. It had kind of swollen from like the bag underneath his eye, and it swole upwards and then completely, you know, just went over his whole eye socket. It was nasty. I've seen a picture of him as well this week, Makhmudov, and it doesn't look much better. It really was a terrible, terrible sight. But yeah, Vianello, you know, I felt he had the quicker feet, the quicker hands. He looked heavier-handed. When he put Makhmudov on the back foot, Makhmudov was a bit kind of inactive, I'd even say. Not inactive, ineffective, I'd say. You know, he didn't seem to fight well when pushed backwards. But yeah, he hurt Makhmudov several times. Makhmudov, I felt, was just too big, too stiff, too slow and cumbersome. And I was very surprised to see Vianello not go to the body really at all for the whole fight. I really felt that we'd see some of that just because he probably did watch, Makhmudov's only loss to the guy whose name has escaped me, Caballel. So I thought he'd probably go to the body, but we really didn't see too much body work from Vianello. But yeah, I did say that the fight wouldn't go the distance. I said this time you can put your house on it, even though I got the Ortiz one wrong with Bohachuk and Ortiz. This one I didn't think could go the full 10 rounds, neither did you, Eddie. So we got that one right. Also on the card as well, Christian Mbili, now 28-0. A unanimous decision for him over 10 rounds against, once again, the very, very unlucky Sergei Derevianchenko, now 15-6. It was, like I say, unanimous, wide in the end for Mbili for the WBC Continental Americas Super Middleweight title. Bad luck again for Derevianchenko. He was a one-armed fighter from round 3. I know you didn't see it, Eddie, but you're very much going to be able to understand where Derevianchenko was coming from, because he tore his bicep, which of course happened to you in the Adamek fight. I think it was in the 3rd round here for Derevianchenko, so it was his left hand, his jab hand, so it completely took that away from him. If my memory serves me right, yeah, you had your power hand bicep torn, so you had to jab your way to what you thought was going to be a victory. He had to kind of power punch his way, sometimes even switch into southpaw just to try and jab with it as well. But yeah, he was like an injured animal really, with Mbili just hunting him down, and the 38-year-old Derevianchenko, I felt, showed a lot of heart and determination to somehow make it to the decision. It looked like he was going to get stopped. His corner were having a good look. They kept saying, show me something, and he kept trying to go out there and show him something, and he did just enough to keep himself in the fight. He's still never been stopped. He's still got that amazing record. Some people were expecting an early stoppage for Mbili. I felt that they were crazy, put some respect on Derevianchenko's name. But yeah, it was all Mbili since the injury occurred, and a very clear victory, and that's the clearest points loss that Derevianchenko suffered, albeit through an injury that you know very well, Eddie. Keep it brief.
Yeah. Actually, we had the same situation happen, because my tendon on my left side was torn, so I had to do exactly what you said he was doing, and try to switch back and forth to throw jabs, and just to be more active with the hands. So yeah, it was almost exactly the same thing, but just an unfortunate situation. Yeah, great to hear that he showed hard and he did what he could, but yeah, it's just unfortunate, man.
Very unfortunate for Derevianchenko once again, just such an unlucky fighter. Moving now to the Windhoek Country Club resort in Namibia over here, friend of the show and part-time policeman and pub owner. He does own a pub called the Low Key Pub, which I swore I'd visit if I ever did travel to Namibia, though it looks very unlikely. Jeremiah Nakafila, now 25-4. He's a good man. He got a KO in the 6th round against Jeremiah Umhere, who is now 10-6. So the battle of the Jeremiahs and Mr. Nakafila came out on top. I'm sure he'll celebrate with a pint or two in his pub. Excellent stuff. What else do we have? We have this one that went down in the York Hall Bethnal Green. There was just 2 fights I'm going to mention here. This was on the Saturday night as well, live on TNT Sport. We saw cruiserweight Alois Yumbi 7-1 with 7 all by KO. He stepped in with Alonzo Berardi, who was 8-0, I think, with 6 KOs. Both men big punchers. But yeah, I didn't really think we'd see it actually go as far as the 10 rounds, but we did. A unanimous decision over 10 for the vacant IBO Continental Cruiserweight title for home fighter Alois Yumbi. Very nice guy. I got talking to him one night at York Hall. But yeah, fair play to Alois, I expected a harder fight for him. I was quite disappointed in Berardi. I felt he had some good wins going in, and you could see at times he showed a lot of skills. He was really light on his feet, good mover, but just wasn't able to put it all together, to be honest with you. So yeah, for a big guy, he could move, and he picked some lovely shots throughout the fight, but he just didn't do enough. He was being outworked, and when he was clearly losing rounds, there was no up in urgency at all. It was just like he was cruising to a loss on points. So yeah, it was a bit kind of, a bit boring towards the end, I guess you'd say. Nothing to do with Alois Yumbi, who of course tried to force the fight for most of it. But yeah, good learning fight for Alois. Yeah, not too much more to mention. I think he he probably hadn't come up against someone like Berardi before, so it's a good one to get a win over there nice and early. Also on the card as well, Denzel Bentley now 20-3 with a draw, a TKO for him in the second against Derek Asazi, now 13-2. Another possible contender for knockout of the year, to be honest. It was for the WBO International Middleweight title. Asazi TKO'd by a right uppercut. I felt that Denzel Bentley probably lost the first round, and I think he was probably losing the second round, to be totally honest with you, until he landed that right uppercut, and it really was a peach of a shot. It came out of nowhere. It was a fantastic shot. Asazi obviously went into the fight, quite confident, hoping he could do something in there. It was a big, step up from his prior kind of level to get to this, headlining on TV and stuff. So, yeah, he gave it his best shot, and unfortunately for him, he came up short very early on in the fight. Moving to the final card of the review part, like I say, we've really flown through this. We're gonna stop here at the Pro Box TV Event Center in Plant City, Florida. This one went down on Wednesday night, so a couple of days ago now, because again, it's Friday. This went on Wednesday. We saw return to the ring for Ivan Dyko. He's now 14-0, a TKO for him in the second against Craig Lewis, now 15-8 with a draw. Ivan Dyko giving away about 30 pounds in weight there. Another nice early knockout for him. I think he seems to be quite inactive recently. He's boxed once this year, once last year, and I think once the year before, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, the main event was Jarrett Hurd, now 25-3 with a draw. A split draw, so that was where his draw come from, over 10 rounds against Jason Rosario, now 24-4 with 2 draws. I have to say, I wasn't too sure it was going to go the distance, this fight here. I just felt that both men didn't have too much left at all. Jason Rosario, all of his losses have been stoppage losses, and Jarrett Hurd, who once upon a time had an amazing chin. He could really take a punch. He could soak up pressure. I mean, it was usually him putting the pressure on, but he was a face forward kind of fighter, and that style, it's not good for longevity. And in recent performances, he's really not looked his old self. So I actually favoured Jason Rosario going in. I felt he might be able to pull off the upset. He was a slight underdog, and I just felt that he would, be able to pull something off, because he's probably got the better wins recently, and Hurd has looked so bad in his last few fights, like I say. But yeah, split draw over 10 rounds there in a tight fight. That brings, though, the review part to a close. It's now time to welcome this week's special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the undefeated super-featherweight contender, ranked number 1 in the world with the WBO. It is, of course, Mr. Albert Bell. Albert, welcome back on the show, my friend.
Nice to be back, man.
It's always a pleasure having you back, Albert. It really, really is. We last spoke back in March. You were in the car on the way to the airport to fly to the Oscar Valdez-Liam Wilson fight. How have things been since then, my friend?
Things been pretty smooth, just enjoying the time with the family, training, getting ready for my next up-and-coming fight, and things that, and keep working and jockeying for position in the division.
And when we last spoke, you were saying that you'd be willing to even try to work with Top Rank to get that world title fight. Obviously, the champion's still Navarrete. Do you think you'll eventually need to put pen to paper with Top Rank to get that shot?
Yeah, we got some stuff in the work with Top Ranks. With Top Rank at the moment. After this fight, if everything goes well, God willing, it should. We should have some things going with Top Rank beginning of 2025 for sure.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant to hear. And let's talk about that next fight. Yeah, obviously it goes down in Dallas, Texas, October the 5th. You'll be boxing Jose Ivan Ortiz. Ortiz, of course, boxed Robson Conceicao back in April. I'm guessing that's the fight you've probably gone and watched a couple of times.
Yeah, I watched it twice. I watched it once by myself. I think I watched it live, but I didn't know that guy then. So then when I got his name and looked at his box work and stuff like that, I seen the fight. So I went back and watched it. Remember, I watched it live. And then I watched it again with my father so he could get a look on the guy, being that he's my head coach. So I watched it twice since the name came across my table.
And what else do we know about Ortiz, Albert?
Not much. I don't know a lot about him. You know what I mean? I'm just happy he accepted the fight. It's like the fourth guy that we're on. Like the first three or four guys turned the fight down. They had agreed to the fight, then backed out last minute and things like that. So that's the benefit of being the fight isn't until October that we can get a solid opponent in enough time to prepare for him, rather than a guy dropping out the week or two before the fight. Then you got to go a whole new game plan and new style of opponent. So I don't know too much about him. I'm just thankful that he accepted the challenge.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, obviously, you know, it's like a world title fight for this guy, of course, because he would love to steal all your rankings, I'm sure. Another thing, obviously, I remember your fight last time out, that brilliant knockout against Jonathan Romero. He obviously boxed over the weekend, gave Kenny Sims a decent fight for a few rounds as well. Back to your fight that's coming up in October, Albert. Do you have a prediction at all? I know it's a 12-rounder.
I'm gonna get him out of there, I believe. You know what I mean? But I'm not going there looking for it. But I believe the way I box and the volume of punches and the pressure that I'm going to put on him and the way I place my shots, I believe I'll get him in. I'll get him in before 12 rounds for sure.
Okie dokie. I mean, you look like you're in the prime of your career. You're on some brilliant run at the moment. I want to get your take on a couple of other things. I wanted to firstly get your reaction on the Robson Conceicao upsetting the odds fight against O'Shaquie Foster. A lot of outcry about a robbery there. Did you think it was a robbery?
I believe O'Shaquie Foster deserved the win, you know, but I think now that he looks back on it, there's a lot of moments he could have capitalized on to put his stamp on the fight even further. But watching it just live, I believe O'Shaquie won clearly. But, you know, when going back, it was a lot of times he was just making the guy miss but not making him pay, and just letting Conceicao just be throwing a lot of shots without a consequence, you know. So I believe I believe they're fighting again. So I think O'Shaquie's going to go in there and do what he needs to do this time around to really put his stamp on the fight and just pick it up a little more.
Yeah, I agree. And whenever we spoke in the past, I mean, we mentioned obviously the name Archie Sharp a lot. He recently suffered a loss. Is that a fight now that no longer really interests you?
I mean, I would still be interested in fighting him. You know what I mean? One loss doesn't find your career. He lost to another undefeated guy. You know, it was actually a great fight. I didn't see the first round, to be honest, so I didn't see the knockdown until afterwards. I'm like, oh, that's why they had the scores like this. I didn't know that he had suffered a knockdown in the first round.
No, there wasn't a knockdown in that fight, Albert.
It wasn't?
No. Archie Sharp got put over twice in the first round of his fight before this against an unknown guy. He got up and won. This fight here, he did just lose on points. There was no knockdowns.
Okay. I probably seen a clip of him getting knocked down in a different fight or something. Okay. But, it was a competitive fight, you know what I mean? But I still would be interested in fighting him. It's, you know, he's still got a great record. What, he 25-1 or something like that, 25-1. So still a decent, great record. So, the interest is still there for the fight if it makes sense when it happens, you know, for sure.
Yeah, getting to 25-0, he actually had the longest win streak of any British boxer at the time. A few other guys have got a draw here and there, but to actually have 25 just clean wins, he had the most of any active British fighter till that loss. Okay, my final real question for you, it's a bit of a random one, but a fight that's been made at lightweight is Shakur Stevenson defending his title against former Super-Featherweight champion Joe Cordina. Do you think that's a competitive fight for Shakur or a walk in the park?
I do believe that it's a competitive fight. I think people don't give it enough credit. I thought Joe Cordina was the best at 130 outside of myself before his last fight. But I think he stayed at the weight class too long, and that's what eventually caught up with him, you know, being his last outing. Because he didn't look that good against the guy that he fought before. So I thought he should have moved up then when he got the win and got by. I thought he should have moved up. But he stayed for one more on the Riyadh season card, and he got upset. But I believe Joe Cordina is an excellent fighter. You know what I mean? He got all the skills, great punch of power, good boxing IQ. So I think it is going to be a decent fight, just depending on which Joe Cordina shows up. If he shows up at his best or the best we've seen him, it could be a good fight with him and Shakur. You know what I mean? Of course, Shakur is a favorite in the fight, but I don't just sleep on Joe Cordina as a cherry pick type opponent or just a underwhelming underdog that doesn't have a shot.
Yeah, very well said. Very, very well said. Just before we wrap things up, Albert, I always like to just give you an opportunity to just close out with a few lasting words to the listeners. Take it away, my friend. Same as always.
Yeah, man, just tune in if you can. I got a big fight coming up October 5th, headlining a great card in Dallas, Texas, including myself, Mickey Bay versus the undefeated Mexican guy on the card in the co-main event. We have former world champion Tony Harrison on the card with me, as well as contender Tyler McCurry. So it's going to be a big card down there in Dallas, October 5th. It'll be streamed live on ProBox. If you can't be in attendance, tune in there. And always, you can catch me on Instagram at Albert Prince Bell. You stay tuned, and big things coming in 2025 for myself and my team.
There we go. Big things. And, of course, go on to the Instagram, follow at Albert Prince Bell. He's coming up to almost 40,000 followers, which is amazing. So certainly head over there. Albert, as always, my friend, the pleasure is mine. Thanks for your time. Best of luck on October the 5th, and we'll speak another time.
All right, thank you. Look forward to hearing from you soon.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, is the news part. Just one small piece of news, and it is that Fabio Wardley has signed with Frank Warren and Queensbury Promotions. For me, it's a bit of a kind of, surprising signing, I think, because he was previously with Matchroom, if I'm not mistaken. I know that sometimes Matchroom don't like to tie guys down in long contracts. Sometimes it's a fight-by-fight kind of thing. But, Fabio Wardley has been very, very impressive of late. Obviously had the fight with Fraser Clark in which he boxed on a Sky show. And, Eddie Hearn didn't win the purse bids for that, if I'm not mistaken. So that was interesting. But now he's actually... Maybe he wasn't with Eddie Hearn, properly in contract. I don't know, but... Did seem kind of strange him signing for Frank Warren, but that is the news. And obviously we know that he's going to be rematching Big Fraser Clark again on that Bivol Beterbiev undercard, which is going down in October, I believe it is. I've forgotten the month off the top of my head. I do believe it is October though. Anyway, that's it for the news. Moving on now to the preview part of the show. There's really, really not too much at all to mention here. We're really scraping the barrel. There's just nothing on TV this week. But, if there's a few guys that I can mention that are friends of the show, then I certainly will. Because if you've been on the show even just one time in the whole entire almost 9 years that I've been hosting this show, then you're a friend of the show for life, and we'll give you a mention in every fight that I can see on the calendar. So we're going to start here later tonight, being it Friday, and this one goes down at the Club Social y Deportivo El Porvenir in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Over here, Jeremias Nicolas Ponce, currently 31-1. That one loss came to Subriel Matias. He's back in a 10-rounder against Alexis Torres, who's now 12-7 with a draw, the best there to Ponce. Also going down this weekend, this one takes place on Saturday in Mexico. Return to the ring for Luis Arias. We mentioned in part 1 Jarrett Hurd. Luis Arias was one of the men who was able to upset the odds against Jarrett Hurd. I didn't see that one coming when it happened. But anyway, friend of the show, Luis Arias, back here in Mexico at the Arena Ciudad de Mexico in Mexico City. Over here, like I say, it's going to be live on DAZN apparently. But Luis Arias returning to the ring after quite a bit of inactivity. He's 20-4 with a draw, and he steps in with Francisco Amezquita, who is 14-13 with 3 draws. That's over 8 rounds at middleweight. And finally, last but not least, another friend of the show, another friend of yours actually, Eddie, and this one goes down at the Met Philadelphia in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA. Return to the ring for Bryant B.Y. Jennings, 24-4, stepping in with Joel Caldwell, who is 9-8 with 2 draws. That's an 8-rounder there at heavyweight. Bryant Jennings coming back to the ring for the first time in just over 5 years since losing to Joe Joyce back in July of 2019. So 5 years out the ring for him, and he steps back in this weekend with Joel Caldwell, who shouldn't really offer any kind of threat to him. But yeah, I did see BY at the Derek Chisora Joe Joyce fight, the other week. I was sat there and he was in the same row as me, and I had to look twice. I was like, is that BY? Looks like BY. It was BY. I know he's maintained a good friendship with Derek Chisora over the years. They've done many rounds in sparring, but I didn't speak to him, and I really didn't think I'd see him back in a ring at all, especially not as soon as this. So it's good to see him back. Nice guy, Eddie, and I think you've probably, if I'm not wrong, sparred him in the 5 years he's been out, no?
You know what? Have I? I think I might have. I think we had got a couple rounds in at some point I want to say that I sparred him. It was a while ago though, but I sparred him probably a few years back. But I heard recently that he was back in the gym and he was working with, if I'm not mistaken, Bozy. And I was like, oh, okay, back in the ring, because he had retired. He had, had some issues with the whole COVID situation. But I had heard he got back in the gym, and I, obviously I'm thinking, oh, could just be back in to stay in shape. He could just be doing it just because he enjoys it. But, typically, you don't just, if you still got some years left, which he does. And you can argue I might, but we just don't go in the gym just to be in the gym necessarily. You know what I mean? Especially if you got, like I said, years left. So I knew, and I had a feeling he was going to be fighting at some point soon, but I didn't know it was going to be like this. But okay, I mean, I would have guessed it would have probably been something similar, but it's just good. This is good for him. Get back in the ring, get your feet wet, see what's possible. There's a lot of opportunity out there right now for older guys who are fighting that don't necessarily want to go to the top. There's all kind of influencer fights. You see what Jake Paul's doing. There's always a lane, for guys to get into. So, he's still got enough left in the tank, I'm pretty sure, to make another run if he did want to. So, yeah, there's a lot available for him. So why not try it out?
Yeah, well, all the best to him. Like I say, nice guy, BY. But anyway, that brings the preview part to a close. In part 1, we did the review part. Then we welcomed our special guest, the undefeated super-featherweight contender, ranked number 1 in the world by the WBO, ranked with all the major sanctioning bodies, Mr. Albert Bell, of course. And then in part 2, we did the news, just one piece of news, that Fabio Wardley is signed with Frank Warren. And then, of course, the preview part there, extremely brief because we just had, I think, 3 fights to mention going on in different cities and countries involving different fighters. A couple of them were friends of the show. That is pretty much what we've done this week. It's been nice and short and simple, and it's probably going to be more of the same next week. I think there's a bit of a down kind of period for the next kind of 2 weekends in boxing, so should be a short show next week as well. But anyway, that brings everything to a close. The final thing for me to do is to come in with the outro, which I'll do in just a few seconds. Okay, and this wraps up episode 462 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Eddie Chambers has been with me for the duration of the show. A big shout out to this week's special guest, that man being the undefeated super-featherweight contender, Mr. Albert Bell. The biggest thanks of all goes out to you, the listeners, as per usual. There has been one piece of news break whilst we've been recording the show, and it's that Shakur Stevenson has signed a promotional contract with Matchroom Boxing. That was a little bit of a surprise. Well, maybe not actually now I think about it, but I like the move. It's going to be interesting seeing Shakur and Eddie as one team. It really is going to be interesting. But anyway, that wraps up the entire podcast. That is everything from myself. Enjoy your weekends, people. Stay safe, and we'll see you all again same time next week.